Hi children, today we are going to learn about location, right? So here it's written up and down. So what does that mean? That means that we have to look at the pictures which are given over here and then we have to trace the right arrow. Now what does that mean? Let me give you an example first and then we would start doing the rest of the tasks. Here you can see that this is an airplane, right? And this aeroplane is in the upward direction, right? You can see that this aeroplane is in the upward direction. It is flying from the ground to the sky, right? So that means it is in the upward position. That is why you can see over here very clearly that only the arrow which is pointing in the upward direction is traced, right? This arrow is pointing in the downward direction and this one is not traced, but this one is traced. So this is what is happening over here, that if the object is in the upward position, that means that you have to trace the arrow which is pointing in the upward direction. Similarly, if the bird or any object that is pointing in the downward direction, then you have to trace the arrow that is pointing in the down direction. So this is what you have to do in the rest of the tasks. Now let's move towards the second section which is in front of it. Here you can see a bird and you can see very clearly that this bird is in the downward direction. That means that this bird is moving from the sky to the ground. That means that we have to trace the arrow which is pointing in the downward direction. Now just look at the arrows which are in front of it. Here you can see the arrow which is pointing in the upward direction. Here you can see the arrow which is pointing in the downward direction. And we have just realized that this bird is moving in the downward direction. That means we have to consider only this arrowhead. So let's start tracing this one. First of all, make a horizontal line. Now stretch the line from top to bottom. Again, make a horizontal line. Now make a slant line in the downward direction. Now again, make a slant line in the upward direction. Again, make a horizontal line. Now stretch the line from bottom to top to complete the tracing of this arrowhead. So we are done with this arrowhead. Now let's move towards the second row and see that what type of arrowhead we have to trace over there. Now here you can see that this man is climbing the cliff or the mountain. So that means that this man is moving from the ground, right? From the ground in the upward position. This man is climbing from the ground towards the top of the mountain or towards the top of the cliff, right? So that means that this man is in the upward position, right? This man is not moving towards the ground, but instead this man is moving from the ground. So that indicates that this man is in the upward position. So we have to trace the arrow which is pointing in the upward direction, and that is this one, right? So let's start tracing it. First of all, you would make a slant line in the upward direction. Now you would make a slant line. First of all, you would make a slant line in the upward direction. Now you would make a slant line in the downward direction. Now you would make a horizontal line and again stretch the line from top to bottom. Similarly over here, make a horizontal line, stretch the line from bottom to top and again make a horizontal line. So we are done with this arrowhead as well. Now let's move towards this one. Here this is some staircase type picture and here you can see very clearly that this arrowhead is in the upward position. That means that this is moving in this position, so we are moving away from the ground. So whenever we are moving away from the ground, that means that we have to trace the arrow that is pointing in the upward position. So let's start tracing this arrowhead since it is pointing in the upward position. So first of all, we would make a slant line. Here again, we would make a slant line. Now we would make a horizontal line and we would stretch the line from top to bottom. Here again, we would make a horizontal line. We would stretch the line from top to bottom and make a horizontal line again. So we are done with the tracing of this arrowhead as well. Now let's move towards the third row and see what we have to do over here. Here we see a chair and a ball, right? And we can see very clearly that this ball is on the ground. This ball is on the ground, right? So this ball is not on the chair. That means that this ball must have fallen from the chair to the ground. So whenever the object is on the ground, that means we have to trace the arrowhead that is pointing in the downward direction. So let's start tracing this one. So first of all, we would make a horizontal line. Now we would stretch the line from top to bottom. Here again we would make a horizontal line. Now we would make a slant line in the downward direction. Again, slant line in the upward direction. Make a horizontal line and again stretch the line from bottom to top, and we are done with the tracing of this arrowhead as well. Now let's move towards another picture. Here we can see a tree and we got some nest and which has eggs on it, right? So this is nest 1 and this is nest 2. And we can see very clearly that these nests are not on the ground. They are on the branches of the trees, right? For example, this nest is on this branch and this nest is on this branch. That shows that these nests are in the upward position. These nests are not on the ground. For example, if this nest is on the ground or over here, then we would say that it is pointing in the downward direction. But here we can see very clearly that these two nests are off the ground. That means that we have to trace the arrowhead that is in the upward position. So here we got an arrowhead that is in the upward position. So we would make a slant line in the upward position, again slant line in the downward position, and now horizontal line and stretch the line from top to bottom. Again we would make a horizontal line and stretch the line from bottom to top, and again a horizontal line, right? Let's move towards the last section. Here you can see a kid, and this kid seems very happy and jumping off the ground, right? And here you can see the two arrowheads, arrowhead in the upward position and the arrowhead in the downward position. And this is the correct answer since kid is jumping off the ground in the upward direction. So let's start doing this arrowhead. So let's start tracing this arrowhead. So first of all, we would make a slant line in the upward direction, slant line in the downward direction, and now make a horizontal line, and then we would stretch the line from top to bottom, and again we would make a horizontal line. We would stretch the line from bottom to top, and then again a horizontal line. So we are done with the tracing of this arrowhead. Now let's move towards the last section. Here you can see a chair and some books on it. So these books are on the chair. These books are not on the ground. So that means that these books are in the up position, right? So this is what we have to do over here. Here you can see an arrowhead in the upward direction and the arrowhead in the downward direction, and the arrowhead in the upward direction is the correct answer since the books are not on the floor or on the ground and they are on the chair. So let's start tracing this up arrowhead. So first of all, we would make a slant line in the upward direction, slant line in the downward direction, and then we would make a horizontal line. Again we would stretch the line from top to bottom, and here again we would stretch the line in the horizontal direction and line from bottom to top, and a last horizontal line. So we are done with the tracing of this arrowhead as well. So this is what you have to do in this task. You always have to look at the picture. For example, if for example the picture of this airplane, this airplane is in the up position. This airplane is moving from the ground to the sky, right? So that means you would trace the arrowhead that is pointing in the upward direction, right? And if there are some pictures, for example, in which the object is on the floor, that means that you have to trace the arrowhead that is pointing in the downward direction. For example, if you look at these books, right? So these books are on the chair, not on the floor. So these books are in the up position, so we would trace the arrow that is in the up position. Similarly, if we look at this picture, here we can see a ball. This ball is on the floor. That means that we would trace the arrow that is pointing in the downward direction. This is what you have to do in this task. I hope that makes sense to you all. Thank you so much, kiddos.